I wonder if part of our job is to help people think differently about the norm, the concept of the norm, the mental model that is the norm. We all have a mental model of what it means to be normal, normative.
I don't know what that is. Do people think of that as preferable?
No, I'm not saying that people prefer to be in the norm, but I do think people...
They prefer to be above the norm, right?
They compare themselves to the norm.
But if they're above the norm by even just a little bit, then they're kind of like, oh, I'm fat and happy.
They can be complacent.
Or I'm not fat and happy or whatever.
They can be complacent.
They can be complacent.
They don't need to challenge themselves.
Yeah. Which is kind of a motivation killer.
It is. So I wonder if we should try to change worldwide the way people think about the norm and the way that they compare themselves to the norm, you know?
Yeah, maybe don't.
I don't know.
It hasn't been a big part of my life. I've always compared myself to me because I just figured I probably wasn't going to fit in anyway.
Oh, yeah, you came from a different...
Yeah. So, like, I never really was part of the norm. Never got to be part of the norm.
Yeah.
So never really thought of it. I don't think of the norm. I like the norm doesn't have any real value or like
meaning.
Yeah.
Influence.
It's kind of
it's a
inert,
non-essential thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was on the other end of it, as you know.
Yeah.
I was always above the norm in grades and in things, and I wasn't until I had one particular professor when I was in college who, because, you know, when you're told all the time that you're above the norm, you don't push harder than you think you need to push because you think you're already there.
Yeah.
And I remember I wrote a paper for him, and it was a good paper. And I handed him my paper. He said, "Is this the best you can do?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, maybe not." And I took the paper back, and then I rewrote it, worked on it some more. Same thing. I hand it to him. He says, "Is this the best you can do?" I was like, "Oh God, maybe it's not," you know. And so you doubt yourself. So I went back. I wrote it again, right? And I was writing a 3-page paper on de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. It was not an easy task, right? So I do the third time, and he asked me again, and I took it back one more time, and then I rewrote it. The fourth time I handed in. And he said, "Is this the best you can do?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Great." And I got an A- on it. I was so upset. I said it was an A-. But that's the thing is, there was more in me.
Yeah.
But I didn't even question that because I had been taught my whole life that I was better than most.
Whatever you turned in
was good enough.
Going to work. Yeah.
Right. And then, but that was transformative for me. So I was like, oh, I can go above expectations. I can push because I want to be better for myself, not because I'm, you know, and it totally changed the way I think about everything from that point on and my first jobs. And so I became that person that went an extra mile.